In this 10 minutes, I would like to share about the strategic positioning of SoLEC, S-O-L-E, the center that we are just about to set up and launch on the 24th of March. So Science of Learning in Education seeks to improve learning outcomes for all students, especially the K-12 sector. And in particular, we will want to look out for the academically more challenged students. Of course, when it comes to low progress students, we do not just leverage on science of learning techniques, but we also need to figure out the social policies that enable them to have a better start and better opportunity with respect to schooling in Singapore. And that's why the Ministry of Education has been strongly going into the early childhood sector with respect to the MOE kindergartens. So how does SoLEC situate in all this? So if we were to look at NIE, we have a Child Development Research Center, and that focuses on infancy all the way till about 6 years old. And it uses science of learning techniques from cognitive, behavioral, and even to EEG and other neuroscience approaches. And then in the physical education side, we have a movement lab that basically looks into health and human potential aspects, such as in exercise, sleep, diet, and so on and so forth. And we do need to get the movement lab's work in its health aspect more and more as it relates to human potential. And from human potential, leveling up things like executive functioning, we then need to figure out how executive functioning leads to the social construction of meaning making and conceptual understandings in the curriculum. Then we traditionally have CRPP and LSL, and they are focused on the learning sciences and pedagogical aspects, and increasingly on the sociological aspects when it comes to low progress students. And so from this analysis, we know that there is a gap to be filled in the primary, secondary, JC, so-called tertiary context that can benefit from science of learning techniques as we see in CRCD and in the movement lab. And then we need to combine these techniques with the more social cultural aspects. And so in some, the SoLEC Center can work alongside a whole array of learning data from the biological, physiological level of analysis all the way to the social cultural aspects of learning. It's an ambitious agenda, but we hope that we might be able over time to be able to use these multiple levels to understand learners and how to maximize their learning potential. So just in sum, we have 3 things we can do in SOLE Center: conduct research that are use-inspired, adopting SOLE approaches for primary and secondary schools, in particular, in Singapore, to broker productive linkages with other NIE centers, such as the Movement Lab, such as the AI in Education Collaboratory, and to contribute in this regard as a whole, one NIE, to the health and human potential agenda. Okay? And third, we can be a place where models and designs of learning and interventions can be understood across multiple levels of learning data for both research and practice outcomes. So this visualization was something I scribbled on my phone, but basically how SOLE connects with CRCD and the Movement Lab on the one end of the continuum, and on the other side to CRPP and to LSL. I'll elaborate this in a while. So SoLEC is able to bring health and human potential research and learning in its related design and policy aspects to NIE for the school system to benefit all students in Singapore. So SOLE SoLEC can be strategically positioned to bring health and human potential from the T1, T2 onto T3 and T4 outcomes as a bridge. And on the converse, it could use problems of practice, because we have already tried out many successful interventions that have worked in schools with ecological validity. But we do have some difficulties with some students, perhaps sub-cohorts of students, such as the academically more challenged ones. And we can use empirical approaches experimental designs in order to drill down to some of the variables that we have hypothesized to be more critical over others. So from T4 to move to T2 and T1. Of course, in T1, we don't have animal samples in our research context, so just to T2. So two things we could strategize SoLEC. Number one, along the K-12 continuum, we could synergize with the PSS Movement Lab and to CRCD using science of learning techniques, leveraging on the capitalization of health with the intersection to human potential. And then on the other side of the continuum, we move from human potential to learning. And as far as learning is concerned, we delve into learning designs and learning pedagogies. And then from the designs and pedagogies, we move to the social aspects because from the point of view of the more academically challenged students, the social context and their home environments matter as far as their opportunities are concerned to learning. And then, as I said earlier, we also have this lofty agenda to align the multiple levels of learning data. And we want to work with the AI in Education Collaboratory in NIE to use AI techniques to crunch the kinds of data that can be fed from the SoLEC Center. And we might be able to make predictions to inform what are more significant variables compared to others. And then we want to also link to the CCE Center, where the character development of children is critical. And in this regard, we could use science of learning techniques such as the science behind moral reasoning in our students. And then finally, we also want to link to the NIE's Assessment Center, because in assessment, there are cognitive, affective, and social aspects of assessment and its practices that has got implications to the science of learning. So let me go back to the scribbling I had. So now I draw it out in a more coherent fashion. So we have SoLEC, and in SoLEC, we try to bring together T2, T3, T4 in this process, but also in the reverse, T4 to T3 to T2. And so we try to bring together data from controlled settings and also in interventions that are already working in classrooms. And then we combine the various labs together by brokering the results and findings from the movement lab to CRCD, and then towards the learning aspects of design and pedagogy in LSL and in CRPP. And then here's an example of the kinds of health well-being issues that can be tackled at the movement lab, such as exercise, diet, sleep, healthy lifestyle. And then at CRCD, we have the executive functioning, working memory, cognitive flexibilities for early childhood. And then we need SoLEC to bring towards the primary, secondary continuum of schooling. And there we can marry with the learning sciences and CRPP. Okay. And then at the other end, we have individual factors. And then at the CRPP end, we have social factors. And social factors have much to do with policy. And then in between, we have the interactional factors that bridge together both individual and the social factors. And that is the strength of the Learning Sciences Lab. Okay. And then we can collaborate with, as far as health is concerned, LKC School of Medicine, Duke NUS, in exploring health aspects of human potential. And then as we move down to human potential, we can then work with A-STAR, with MOE divisions. And then as far as leveling up, for example, low progress students, we need to work with agencies such as the Uplift Office at the MOE. And so across this space, at the other end of the continuum, we go increasingly into sub-cohorts such as special needs. And then towards the social aspects, we go increasingly to CCE. And then you see assessment somewhere in between. And so let me just say that SoLEC affords now an opportunity to bring together health and human potential on one end of the continuum and policy on the other end of the continuum. So we can act as an interdisciplinary brokering space for dialogues with community partners across the whole of this country and internationally. So number one, SoLEC brokers between education and HHP. Okay, we develop that link between health and cognitive functioning or effective functioning, and then that further link to learning. And then we can broker learning to learning designs, and that is to the learning sciences, and then the learning designs to the sociological aspects and the policy programs that can help different groups of students to maximize all the potential of all students. And then to do this important role, we want to then develop the capacity of teachers, because our hypothesis is that apart from the parents, it's the teacher that will spend a large proportion of time with their students, and that if they could see their students through this entire K-12 continuum, I think we would have done a great favor to our students in Singapore. And hopefully in this whole process, we will develop students to the highest potential with our understandings in the science of learning and education. Thank you very much.